Welcome to the Circular Industry Talks of the LDE Center for Sustainability. Today I'm glad that we have both Arjen Wierikx and Matthijs Bookelmann. Matthijs is Senior Advisor at Route Circulair and Arjen is PhD Researcher at Utrecht University of Applied Sciences and TU Eindhoven. And together they will present the Circular Economy Maturity Model, which is a tool developed to help companies map their circular performance and provide insights into how they can improve in transitioning to circularity. So Arjen and Matthijs, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ruud. Thanks for having us. As Ruud already mentioned, my name is Matthijs Bookelmann. I work for Route Circulair as a consultant circular economy. I'm here together with Arjen because in a collaboration with the Technical University of Eindhoven and Applied University of University of Applied Sciences of Utrecht, we have developed a circular maturity measurement, which we're going to tell you a little bit more about. But before I get into the measurement, I want to tell you a little bit about Route Circulair, so you know the context in which we decided to develop this tool in collaboration with the universities. Route Circulair is a consultancy that wants to help companies get from talking to doing in the circular economy, because there's a lot of talk about how we should transition to the circular economy. But when it gets to action, sometimes we see some stagnation. We have a mission to help 10,000 companies to get started with circular economy before 2030, because we feel that's might be a tipping point to actually get this transition started. We do this in various ways. So we help companies develop circular strategies and implement them. We guide public-private collaborations on specific themes in circular economy. We help supply chain collaborations to get started in the circular economy. And to reach our mission, we also developed the circular maturity measurement because we want to make it possible for any company to get started with this transition. Also, if you're a little bit more far away from the knowledge that is already available on this transition and how to make it happen. Based on the scan that we have had available for 2 years now, there's more or less 500 companies that have already used this circular maturity measurement. We see that a lot of companies are actually doing something already. For example, they have their waste management up and running, but there's a lot of more steps to be taken. Most of them are still mainly a linear business. Why is it not taking off? We have also asked in the maturity measurement, what are the challenges and motivations to get started with circular economy? One of the biggest reasons why, the biggest challenges that they have is actually a lack of knowledge and actionable perspective. So what can I do with my company to get started? We also see this in practice. We work, of course, with many companies in the Netherlands. And there's a really large group, a surprisingly large group for us every time over and over again, that still is not aware of the urgency to get started with this transition to the circular economy. If they are aware that they have to do something to manage their resources more efficiently, they have no idea where they're standing currently or what would be the most logical next step. And even if they know what is the next step, most of the time they don't have the right knowledge, skills, or processes within their company to actually get started. That's the main reason why we developed this circular maturity measurement, as on the one hand to make companies aware of where they're currently standing, and on the other hand also to activate them, to make this transition as small as possible so that they can get there in small steps. We decided not to focus only on a material stream analysis because to actually make this change, you have to make it part of your whole business. So we measure circular performance in 10 different business teams because many companies that we find in the wild in the Netherlands, they have already, for example, a circular strategy, but it's not taking off. That is because most of the time the leadership or culture is not ready. They don't have the right skills. So it's important to make all these different business teams aligned to actually make the transition to the circular economy. Because we want to make it accessible, the scan is freely available to any organization that wants to fill it out. They can find it online. And we measure circular maturity on a basis of on a level from 1 to 5. And when companies fill out the circular maturity scan, so when they go to the website, they fill out a questionnaire of more or less 80 questions. It takes about 32 minutes on average. They get a link to the circular maturity results page, where they can see how they have scored on the different business teams, and they can click on them and they get actionable recommendations based on the level of maturity that they have and the business team. And they also can click on links to our knowledge repository, where we have a lot of do-it-yourself formats. So how to make a strategy, circular business model canvas. We have tried to incorporate as many as these already existing tools as possible, also from other organizations. If you go there, you can find things of Circulair, of Circulair, any organization that can let these companies get started by themselves. And actually, yesterday I was in a talk with a bakery. The manager had filled out the scan and told us that he had bookmarked the results page. So every time he wants to make a next step, he goes to the results page to see, okay, what can I do more to raise my circular maturity? We also help companies with guided circular maturity measurements. An example of this is Horsman & Co., a family business in the construction industry. They wanted to have a little bit more guidance in this circular maturity scan, also to take along the people within the company. So we have given an inspiration talk on circularity in the construction industry in their canteen in a lunch session. We send out this online tool to 20 people within their company from different layers and different departments, to also see what are the different perspectives within the company to circularity. We had some in-depth interviews, and then we discussed with them the results, and together with them determined the next steps. This is quite interesting because we see that, for example, the CEO always scores much higher than the sustainability manager, because they think we have a strategy, we already got started, and the sustainability manager sees that, okay, we do the first steps, but there's so much more possible. And just measuring this within a company can also bring a really good discussion on where are we actually standing right now and what is the next step. Another way in which we deploy the tool is for overarching organizations. So you can think of provinces, municipalities, economic boards, sector organizations, industry organizations, to send out the scan online to as many companies as possible to get a grasp of what are the challenges of entrepreneurs within our region, and how can we actually most efficiently help them to make the next step in the circular economy. Because there's a lot of support programs that are being taught out, but yeah, it would be great if we can actually think of the actual challenges companies are experiencing when we make these support programs. So most of the time we make a mix between the online reach out to many companies and also to do a guided circular maturity scan with a few companies in the region to get even deeper insights. So we can give some recommendations about how to use the instruments that the government has to support companies in this transition. This was the practical side, because I think the most interesting thing for today's talk about how did we develop this tool together with business and academia. So I'm going to give the word to my colleague Arjen.
Yes, thank you, Matthijs. What I can do is see if I can share the slides as well, so I can do the clicking myself, see if that works. Yeah, I think you see my screen now, which is exactly the same presentation as Matthijs has on his screen. Well, I think the balance between applying what we have developed in practice and learn a little bit about the scientific background of this model is the most interesting part. So allow me to share with you in the next couple of minutes a little bit about the scientific background of the model that we created. And I'd like to start by where I started my PhD, which is almost 4 years ago. I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years when I joined Utrecht University of Applied Sciences. So I have an entrepreneurial drive in looking at this challenge. And as an entrepreneur, I was confronted with what our leaders were telling me, like, okay, dear entrepreneur, you have to be 100% circular by 2050. This is no surprise to all of you. But what is basically the question is, okay, well, that's within 25 years from now. So when is it that I can reach my hand and say, hey, dear Prime Minister, I am now 100% circular? So this is where I started my research. And I soon find out that where we are right now is like, okay, this is like a 2023 figure. We are, as a world, at 7.2%, which of course is still a long way to go. And especially if you realize that in 2018, we were all at 9.1, and in 2020, we were at 8.6, basically telling us, okay, we have to go all the way up very quickly to 100% to 50, but in practice, we are going down. That's a big challenge. In addition, if you look at where we are at the Netherlands, well, we are, as we see in a lot of situations, best in class. We are at 24.5%. And in the EU, we're also luckily doing a little bit better than in the rest of the world. But the challenge again is that this is like a macro level figure. From a micro perspective, there is not a lot in terms of research available. And when you start exploring this research, you see that this research is only starting to take off in 2016. And well, this figure is what we pulled up at the end of 2022. But basically, if we want to redo this next year, we'll see this going up very, very, very quickly. So it's a very young domain, but publications are exploding. And I guess that in the research that you are all doing, you experience kind of the same thing. But then again, well, there is a lot available, but is it on the right level? So when we talk about 7.2%, the majority of the research is on the micro level, where as an entrepreneur, we are looking at figures which are focusing on a micro level, on the actions of individual. In this case, being a firm, an organization, or whatsoever. That is making it quite a bit of a challenge. So we did a systematic literature review, and what did deliver this to us is that if, as an entrepreneur, if I want to measure circular performance, there is over 100 models available that can help out to make this happen. But then again, knowing that 99% of the companies in the Netherlands, but also in Europe, is small and medium enterprises, if I want to fill out one of these 100 plus tools, it takes up to 365 parameters to complete it. And there's no way that I have time to do this. So in the end, from a theoretical background, it probably is okay, but from a practical usage perspective, it's less okay. So in the end, our literature review delivered close to 800 papers that we are going to take further to find out, okay, what is it that we need to do to make to create a model that we can use further on. Maybe you recognize some of these tools that are available, and some of them are on a micro level, but as said, some of them have up to 365 parameters that you are talking about. So the Gordian knot that we were facing in the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, is that because it's a young domain, we are lacking transparency from a scientific perspective. We are talking about varying substantiation, and as also Matthijs already said, there is a focus on in and outflow. We are not looking at it from a more holistic or systemic perspective. There's inconsistencies, etc., etc. For a medium and small enterprise, for an entrepreneur, this is very confusing because he is confronted with all of these let's say lack of standardizations and ambiguous terms, etc., etc. He doesn't know where to go. So this is where we draw the conclusion that if we want to measure circular performance on a micro level, that there is not a tool available that we can actually use in a systematic way in a small and medium enterprise to make circular performance measurable. This is where we took off in the consortium together with Utrecht University of Applied Sciences, Eindhoven University of Technology, and Circulair, where we said, okay, for us it's important to adapt those 5 starting points. One, we like to approach the organization, the firm, from a systemic perspective, and not just looking at a single function, but all functions in conjunction with one another. Second, it has to be dynamic because it's a young domain. Things are still developing rather quickly. It has to be accessible, so there should not be a high threshold. We want to do something which is longitudinal, as we want to do benchmarking, and we prefer to develop a model which is industry agnostic, which means that we kind of like to apply it in any organization. The dynamic part that comes from the co-evolutionary thinking, which basically means that well, we are now starting in this young domain around circularity. We are somewhere here. We are still, let me also in terms of time take this picture. We are still creating new views of what we believe is circular performance. We are thinking of still developing new characteristics in terms of what we think is important in creating the circular economy, which means that we're creating new knowledge that we want to add to the model, which means that we have to be able to adapt this into our thinking as well. So the research design that we created is a combination, on the one hand, of design science, where Peffers and colleagues is the one that we use as a starting point. Peffers and colleagues use as a starting point, together with the model that was created by De Bruin and colleagues, which is about maturity thinking. And Matthijs said we are using about 80 questions, and then we calculate maturity levels, which is exactly the combination that you see here. So, well, I earlier mentioned the reference set of papers that we created from the systematic literature review. In applying the second phase of design science, based on this model, we created a lot of interviews, and those interviews were partly done by me and my team, but also by the people from Circulair, who already started back in 2016 with talking to the front runners in terms of circular economy. So what we did was we analyzed over 50 interviews to create what we call the alpha test. And the alpha test was then discussed with a panel of academics on the one hand side, and on the other hand with representatives from entrepreneurs, by saying, are we asking the right questions? Do you understand what we are asking here? And then we said, and this is quite unique when you talk about design science, we decided to do a beta test. So we created a survey that, in cooperation with the province of Utrecht, we were able to collect over 300 respondents. And again, with some of the respondents, we had additional interviews. So they first completed the survey, and then afterwards we talked to them to understand, okay, you have this type of score. Why is it that you did do that? So we again analyzed those interviews using a Goa coding schemes to, in the end, validate our survey with 3 Delphi rounds with 10 participants per Delphi round, to in the end create our artifact, which is the instrument that Matthijs talked about, and the report that Matthijs just illustrated is the final part of the design science cycle. And of course, there is here the academic publications that we are working on at this point in time, which is also the completion of my dissertation, by the way. So this is the research model. The artifact, we are still in the process of designing that in a graphical, more attractive way. So you probably recognize in the center the circle that also Matthijs already presented. And what you see here is the dimensions that we're using to measure. Here you see with the numbers, the number of questions that we are asking per dimension. Here is the different maturity levels that we are using. And just to complete the discussion, we are using the R ladder as outcome variables to actually validate our model. So this is what I wanted to share with you from a scientific perspective, and I think now the floor is open for questions.
Thanks a lot, Arjen, and also Matthijs. Yeah, very interesting to see how you can translate all those abstract ideas that we have about circular economy into something that indeed is actionable at the company level. Any questions from the audience? Let me kick off with one myself. I'm echoing somehow. Not anymore, apparently. If you look at all those companies that have participated, you of course see a huge diversity in the level that they achieve, and but they're also active, as you said. Well, I was quite interested with the industry agnostic aspect, because in design we always try to be context specific. Because we know that if you don't adapt to the context, you probably end up with a design that might not be suited for your specific target group. Well, we might exaggerate there. We have hundreds of smartphones to satisfy all kinds of very small target groups. But how are you convinced that being industry agnostic in your case is indeed an approach that works?
Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit on that from my perspective, and Matthijs, please fill in if needed. if from the literature we learned that quite a bit of the available tooling and studies were focusing on manufacturing industries. This sounds like obvious because that's where products are created. On the one hand, again, going back to that question from our government, from what is it that you need to do to become 100% circular? There is many more companies than just only the manufacturing companies that actually create a product. There's a lot of service companies. There is the non-commercial companies. There's companies in healthcare. So we said, okay, also for those companies, we need to develop something that they can get an indication in terms of, okay, well, what is it that I can do to increase my level of circularity? This, in addition to, and my background is in logistics, so thinking in terms of value chains, supply chains is part of my personal DNA. So from a value chain perspective, we also said that, okay, for those companies that are participating in a value chain or in the supply chain of manufacturing industry, also for them, there should be something available to get a picture on, okay, how circular is my company. And we said that a value chain as such doesn't have an owner. A company has. So a company can do such a measurement. So on the one hand, we recognize that with the tool we developed, we are staying on a level which is quite generic, which also means that if you really want to go in depth, then there is additional tooling available, which is much more sector specific. But what our tool does make visible, and this is really industry agnostic, is the interaction between the various dimensions that we talked about. So what does culture have to do, for example, with the strategy of the organization in terms of working together in becoming more circular? What is the value chain collaboration dimension, which is also one of them? How does that relate to your innovation and technology dimension in terms of what you have to do to become more circular? And this is really something that is absolutely industry agnostic in our view, and also applicable in any type of organization. Does that answer your question a little bit, Ruud?
Largely, yes, and I fully agree with the value chain perspective, and that indeed things like strategy, but also especially collaboration over the value chain are really important. And I indeed just wondered, but I also realized that you need to have some level of simplicity also to make the tool usable. But there is a difference, for instance, between consumer-to-consumer products on the one hand, and big investment business-to-business products on the other hand. And yes, of course, there is just a difference. But yeah. I also see that you need to have some compromises there. A question by Lucas, I see. Lucas, you are still muted.
I think Jacco was first.
You have a number. Oh, Jacco has a number one. Thought I was on number, but I didn't. Okay, sorry, Jacco, you first.
Yeah, okay. I thought that the order didn't matter so much, but now I've got the floor. Yeah, thank you for an interesting presentation. I got a few questions from what I understood, and you talk about this. Well, I looked into maturity models a little bit myself, although already around 10 years ago or so. So if you come up with a literature review of hundreds of papers, 750, I was just wondering whether that's really about the maturity model, is that the circularity input. And the second thing I wanted to add is, well, maturity models are more a bit from the management side. It's really good to look into, but how to distinguish these maturity levels between levels of ambitions. So they are about competency skills. Do quite a lot on circular skill, quite a lot on circular skills. So we know quite a bit, but say, how do you qualify for for the highest level? Are we then still in the paradigm of ecological modernization, or can you also distinguish between levels of ambition or circularity in relation to societal change? How do you see that, or how do you bound that? Where do you stop? And that's, I think, already quite some questions.
Okay. Yeah. On the first question, Jacco, the 759 papers that we have been analyzing are on circular performance. And within that set of 759, there is a subset. So we made a second classification. How many papers are talking about, on the one hand, circular performance, but also are applying some kind of maturity model thinking. And to be honest, that limits only to 4. So there is until at that point in time, we did this study end of 22. In the last couple of 2 years, some new papers have been published, which are also applying maturity model thinking with regard to circular performance. But by that time, it was only like 2 or 3 or so. And they ended by just indicating like, okay, these are the dimensions and there are some subdimensions, and then that's it. So there is not an application of the model in practice to validate it. From, hey, are we asking the right questions? Are we actually taking the proper dimensions that we are measuring? And to your second question, like, do the levels also talk a little bit about ambition that you might have? Yes, they do. So I presented the 6 levels that you can achieve. And what we did is that we used the interview transcripts to define for each level of maturity, in this particular case, from, okay, what does it mean? So that's what we did with the first series of interviews. And you saw in my research model that we did the beta test, where we did interviews with some companies that we also measured using the survey. And in those interviews, we were validating those levels. Like, okay, from a cultural perspective, you, based on your Likert score, which was recalculated to a maturity level, you score like level 2, which basically means a basic level, which in our definition means this. Is that something that you recognize? So we validated that in that way. Does it talk about ambition? Yes, I think not in the definition of the maturity level. But if you look at the model, and Matthijs, you can complete this if you want to. But if you look at the online environment that we have available, on the one hand, you measure your maturity where you are today. But we also then, based on your maturity scores for each dimension, we give you recommendations what you can do to actually grow your levels in any of the dimensions that we talked about. So Matthijs mentioned in his talk the bakery that's going back to the URL every day to see, hey, I did this. What is the other step that I can take? So we have a list of, Matthijs, how much is it? About 1,200 recommendations, which is also part of the online environment that people can use to grow their level of circularity. But in the definition of the maturity levels, we don't talk about that specific ambitions, because it's just the level itself. In the end, any company might have the ambition, of course, to become regenerative, which is the level 5.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then now it's your turn, Lucas.
Hey, so because my internet is a little bit stable, I also posted my questions in the chat. So the first question is, where can I find the questionnaire? I couldn't find it immediately Googling. maybe you can post the chat. I think that's also interesting for everyone. I really like the approach. I really can see the entrepreneurial background on how you develop the model, right? This really rapid iteration, consumer feedback, really cool. And the second question, I also, because I was looking up this other paper on the systemic review, I see that there is 2 newer papers on systemic reviews on maturity models, one from Aalborg University and one from WTH Aachen. Not sure if you know how it changed between 2009 and 2022 and 23, what kind of like these reviews found. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, the literature review from Urenholt and colleagues from 22 and also the other one, I haven't read in detail. So those are ones that appeared after we completed our literature review. So thanks for the tips. I'll do that. Urenholt, by the way, is one of the authors that has created an earlier maturity model, as based on the question from Jacco. I mentioned that there is 2 maturity models in circular performance available. One is from Urenholt, but they didn't develop it further. So it's part of our background. But I haven't read these studies in detail, so I cannot talk about the differences. So I have to dive into that, which I will do. Thanks a lot.
No, I also really like that your model, right, is like, as you said, it's a very dynamic area. So you actually make it, right? It's not a paper and like it's online, it changes, you have updates. I really like that a lot. I think that's where academia needs to go much more to be much more agile. And then the third question is, what other KPIs in circularity do you see companies use most of the time right now? And maybe with the focus to Europe.
Matthijs, will you answer that question?
Yeah, we see that a lot of companies look at the CSRD to find their metrics, although that is going to change, of course, with the omnibus. And a lot of companies that we speak to, they're also using the SBTi commitment. So they are first looking at carbon measures that they're translating to their material use. That is what we see a lot. And of course there's a lot of metrics about how much percentage they use of recycled inputs, and material stream KPIs. So how much input of materials, how much output of materials corrected for how much economic growth the company has made.
Okay, and then maybe which ones should we use? Because I feel like, right, that's on the R level scale, that's at the bottom, right? Recycling it's like the last stuff. We should focus much more on the top ones, but I feel like companies don't really see that as circularity.
And so a lot of organizations that we work with, they also start from, okay, in 2050, we have to be 100% circular. What does that mean? So we challenge them to come up with goal setting for their own organization, because every context is different, and to also engage their own employees in making these KPIs. Okay, if that is the goal, or a little bit more concrete for the organization, how can we get there? What should we measure of, for example, in our catering department or in the gift shop, or it really depends on the company on how can we make it measurable. And we also include supply chain partners in those kind of sessions to also think along, okay, what can we do to help you achieve those goals? So mainly it's a process that we always do within the company with the people, because change management is a big part of this transition.
Yeah.
To together determine what should we be measuring to see if we're going into the right direction, and which actions do we need to take within the different departments to actually achieve those.
And have you had any company that actually completely changed their business model from selling products to, like, I don't know, lending products, or go to something completely different?
We have not had any company that went completely overboard with the linear economy and dive into the circular economy. I think this is what we ideally would like to see, but we cannot run if they are still walking. We have to do it step by step, especially in smaller companies. If they rely on just one product or just a few products, it's quite scary to make that big switch in once.
On the other side, Lucas, maybe in addition to what Matthijs said, in the interviews, there is a couple of companies that we have been talking to, and this is interesting perspective, that said that their culture in the organization is such that making a switch towards new business models, so as a service, subscription-based, etc., they prefer to set up a new legal entity, create a new business with a new culture, and separate it. And there is a very nice example of a very traditional make company that it's a family-owned company, existed for over 100 years. And they saw that this was a step they need to take, that their production the series were too great, too large. There was a lot of inventory cost, a lot of scraping at the end, and they decided to create a new company to start 3D printing on demand, no inventory, and use IoT technology. And they said we can't do that in the family-owned company because that culture is not capable of adapting that. And this is what we saw a couple of times, which is interesting. Maybe your last remark when you move to the third question, which is we adopted design science because we have a continuous discussion, and this is interesting in our consortium. The people from Route Circulair, they are the ones that are talking to the companies every day, all day long. Well, from Eindhoven University, so they are really focusing on practice. From Eindhoven University, we want to go rigor, preferably 4 or 5 levels deep. And this is interesting in working from Utrecht University of Applied Sciences. You are balancing between rigor and relevance. But what we did in applying design science with so many interviews and so much data is that we now say we have not been balancing. We have, on the one hand, done a rigorously thorough job in so much analyzing so much papers, but also collecting so much data. But in doing the literature review, in the end, we did say there is some level of saturation. So we are stopping here because we are not getting any new insights in terms of dimensions that we want to evaluate. It's okay. So this is also why I haven't read the other papers. For me, it's okay. Next, we want to create the artifact. So this, in addition to what you just said, which I think is very important.
Yeah, and I guess we can spend a lot more time on this topic, as there's a lot more to say. But I would like to move on indeed to the next question. Nirai.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Very informative. I have got a couple of questions. First is about the applicability domain of the tool. So, is it something like that that is applicable to all industrial sectors out there, or a particular sector that you target through this tool? And the second question would be about the use of the tool for the purpose of circularity by design, meaning if a company has just started with a new product or portfolio of the products and does not have that much knowledge and information, how useful the tool would be in that case.
Yeah, the tool is industry agnostic, so we apply it to any sector. I think it fits best to the manufacturing industry, just because most of literature is about the manufacturing industry, and that's where a lot of our questions come from. But we have tried to phrase them in a way that is applicable to multiple industries. And yeah, my example earlier in this presentation was an industrial baker, so that's not per se a manufacturing, a high-tech manufacturing environment. We use it also in construction. So that's, I think, the answer to the first question. And we also validate every change we make to the tool with companies. And what we see is that it might be less relevant for companies that have less than 10 employees, because quite a few questions also are about processes that they might not have. I think that maybe also applies to your question about a new business or a new business unit. So I think from about 10 employees and above, it starts to be interesting to use this tool. And what we see also is that companies that are very far, they would have wanted, for example, more recommendations, while companies that are just starting, they might be overflown with recommendations. So we always try to strike a balance that works for the majority of companies.
Right. But what about the company which has been there for very long, but started with a new portfolio, for instance? What about that?
I think what you might, oh yeah, Arjen?
Yeah. For this company, we asked them to complete the survey twice. And this was a bit of a challenge because the managing director was the same person for both companies. But that was okay. We said, okay, can you do it for your traditional company? And can you do it for the new company? With different results, though, because also in the traditional company, there is a lot that he can still do. But it still has a function, and also for the new company, there were still a lot of recommendations that he could take on to improve, especially the collaboration in the value chain, because he is depending quite a bit on data that he receives from his customers. So I think in general, what the instrument does is creating awareness. I also remember one of the companies in the beta test. We also interviewed him in the first round. He is in what he does already very, very circular. And then he completed the survey and he came back to us and said, oh, wow, I didn't know that I still had so many things that I can still do to become even more circular. But his processes anyhow were already very circular. So this is the awareness that the instrument creates with any type of companies, that okay, there might be things that do not apply, but there's also tons of things that do apply, which you can do something with. And going back to the discussion what we just had with Lucas, in terms of the design science and continuous development, we are also learning, like, okay, in the next version of the tool, we will develop a next iteration in terms of type of questions that we will be asking. And yes, we probably at some point in time, we might have to take a decision to become a little bit more sector specific. One of the interesting, I'm not sure, Ruto, if I have the time to do that, but from a research perspective, the challenge that we have is that you saw when I presented the artifact that we use the R letter as the outcome variable checks to validate the model. But the R letter definition from Potting and colleagues is focusing on manufacturing. So we are looking at, there are some studies that we are now investigating, but we are looking at R letter definitions that apply, for example, to healthcare. or R-letter definitions that apply to more service-oriented organizations. So we can do a second and third round of validation of the model specifically for those sectors. But this is still a gap in research. R-letter is very much limited to manufacturing only.
Yeah, great, thanks. So perhaps when it becomes more sector specific, the recommendations can also be quite tailored to a certain situation. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hey, Elise, you had to be patient for a while, but your turn.
Thanks. Yeah, I had 3 questions, I think. And the first one, I wonder what the companies, what is the target, and what kind of companies take the test? Is it companies that are lit of Route Circulair or Circulair West, as I saw was one of the examples? Or do you also target companies outside of those groups? How does that work? How do you approach companies? How do you make the product known or the test known? So that's question 1.
Presentations like today. No, I think what helps a lot is just talking about circular economy. We give a lot of inspirational talks for entrepreneurs in networks. This could be via sector networks, VNO-NCW, circular economy networks, and we try to give the tool a place there so that people can actually find it. But we also work together with a lot of overarching organizations to actually help entrepreneurs make the first step into circularity. So this would be mainly SMEs, which is a very hard group to target. But they find us because we also track the link that they use. So most often because we have spoken about circular economy and triggered their interest. I think only 15% finds the tool online by themselves. So it is still a lot of awareness raising about circularity overall before they start thinking, oh, what can I do with that?
Okay. And my second question was, I was wondering if you sometimes had company that are stuck in their transition or in their developments, and if you would identify kind of bottlenecks or yeah, I mean, what we see is that usually companies can operate in a specific bandwidth to continue making profit or continue functioning a bit as usual, and then stuck in their development. Do you identify some of those factors or yeah?
Yeah, as we are getting into the last 5 minutes, and I also see a question of Jamie. Please try to get the answers and questions relatively short, so Jamie also can get a turn in asking a question.
Yeah, so the first things that come to mind that we see with multiple companies is that the circular economy and changing to the circular practices takes quite some investment. So this is an obstacle. Many companies also have difficulties with certifications or legal regulations about, for example, waste that they cannot be used again as an input for their products. And we see quite a bit that there is some kind of circular strategy, but it does not translate to day-to-day business. So there's a big gap between the ambition and actually making it part of everyone's job.
Okay, and can I ask my last question very quick?
If it is a short question and has a short
I
answer.
saw that you, as a level of achievement, you mentioned regeneration, so that goes beyond net zero. How do you how do you rate that? And are there a lot of organizations that reach that level?
There's currently not a lot of companies that score 5 out of 5. I think the highest average that we get is level 4. But yeah, we're constantly trying to push that needle further.
Okay, well, if you have names of company that score 5, I'm interested. That was my last question. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, to you.
Yes, it's a short question. I already asked it in the chat, but I'm currently working on a related project that's also based on circularity, and I was wondering, well, seeing the time, if I could get in contact with you via maybe email or something to maybe discuss it further. But yeah, I don't know, maybe you can share it in the chat for the rest, or I can share mine and then you can contact me if you want.
My email is in the chat, Jamie. So
say that should be possible to arrange.
Perfect. Thank you so
And
much.
one of the intentions of a meeting like this to, well, basically expand the network we all have to some extent. If there are no further questions, I would like to thank Arjen and Matthijs once more for the interesting presentation and the well, also the quite lively question and answers. And thank you all for your participation. Hope to see you in two weeks, and then we will have a presentation by Nico Werkman, who is project leader repair at Decathlon, and he will give a talk on repair within the circular economy. So thanks and